Welcome everyone, my name is Kevin Chambers and welcome to EMA's Health and Safety podcast series. We're really glad that you could join us. With me today I've got the inimitable Andy Evans. Andy, welcome.
Pleasure to be here as always, Kevin.
Really pleased to have you here with us. Could you tell us just a little bit about your company? You're the Director of Metanoia Safety. How did that come about, and maybe how did metanoia come about? Is it a word?
It is a word. Metanoia is a word. It means a profound change of thinking.
Okay.
It's linked to paranoia.
Okay.
But meta sort of is the profound bit, change of thinking. On the website, we've got the tagline is about it's the uncomfortable art of changing your mind.
Okay.
Which I think is what we really need to do, and possibly what we'll talk about a little bit later on. So metanoia safety is really about changing the approach to safety that you take through thinking differently. Largely speaking, and we've been going for nearly 10 years now.
Okay,
we're a small but very capable team. I work across a whole heap of industries, and what we've been developing recently is what we call the metanoia way. So we've got this complete package now that you engage with us, and we'll take you on the full safety journey. Part of my studying, I studied a master's degree in occupational safety and health a number of years ago. And one of the papers I did was organisational learning.
Okay.
And it was a paper that particularly struck a chord with me, and that safety really, and this is what I think we're going to touch on as well, is safety in organisational context safety is not relevant, it's the change that's relevant.
Okay.
And organisational learning is about how organisations learn and develop and grow and continually improve.
And change the way they
do things.
Yeah.
And one of the course books was The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge.
Yep.
And I really, really like that book, and I really like his philosophy. And one of he calls this whole idea metanoia.
It's interesting. You have kind of segued into our topic today. The topic, listeners, is the philosophy of safety. Does safety exist as a subject?
Yes.
Well, so what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I've got to be careful here, of course, because of course it's a subject, because EMA offer courses in it.
We do offer courses in it, but let's dig down into that. Does it deserve to be considered a subject?
It's a really interesting question, and I think when we talk about people in safety, often people don't leave school thinking, I want to work in safety.
No.
There's numerous different pathways that people get into it.
Yep.
And my pathway is through education. So I would say primarily I'm an educator.
Yep.
And
we both have that in common,
We both have that in common, and it's possibly one of the reasons why we
kind of get on.
We kind of get on.
Yeah.
And
admittedly, you taught a subject that really, that could hardly even be
physical
called a subject.
education. Is
physical
a
education. They had to put the word education in its name so people would take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But it is a different. I give that. It's a different subject, and this is when I was studying it way back. I often wondered whether it was actually a subject.
Yep.
And because it's not. It's just movement, really, isn't it? But there is learning involved. So I've always had an interest in this concept. It used to be called pseudo knowledge, or pseudo subjects. So it's subjects that aren't real subjects. So it's subjects that are really the application of knowledge based on other subjects.
Okay.
So then you've got to say, well, what are the basic subjects? So then you've got things like science, literature, history, geography. You've got those are your key subjects.
Yeah.
But you can go it deeper than that, and then you can go.
But in physical education, you've got anatomy, you've got nutrition, you've got
absolutely. But those are the real subjects,
Yeah.
and physical education is just the application of
right.
biology in an applied setting.
Yep.
And that's always stuck with me, and I think safety would fall into that same category as physical education.
The idea then being that safety in and of itself isn't so much the subject, the safety is the application of other learning.
Absolutely. Or if you take a step back, safety is actually an outcome.
Yep.
And this is a debate that's gone on for many, many years in many levels in safety. It's still going on now. And one of the challenges that we've got in safety is that nobody's really clearly agreed on a definition of it.
Okay, of what safety is.
What safety actually is.
Okay.
And because of that, if you haven't got a clear definition, as I think we touched on in one of the previous podcasts, it can be anything to anybody. And therefore it gets really messy really quickly because it never stops growing. So just because you put the word safety in front of it, suddenly it matters. And people have done that, with psychological safety.
Yeah.
which is it's a term that's been around for quite a long time, but it really isn't anything to do with safety as we would know safety.
Okay.
It's to do with people feel comfortable speaking out.
Right.
Now that's got nothing to do with what you would classify as normal safety. I did a master's degree in safety.
Yep.
We didn't touch on that. We were talking about chemicals. We were talking about construction sites.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with including psychological safety.
No, of course there's nothing wrong with it. You're like, if I can paraphrase you, you're like, well, but why is safety there? Why is that word there?
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be a better word to use for that, to differentiate it from what would be classified as classic safety? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's that whole, does it really exist, or is it just the application of a whole heap of different knowledges tied into a field of trying to stop people getting harmed?
Okay. What could some of those other subjects then be?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, because one of the other things that I do, and possibly how we sort of got engaged with each other to start off with, was the EMA Diploma in Health and Safety Management. Safety is multidisciplinary.
Yep.
And that's the other subjects that feed into it. Biology.
Okay. Yep.
Like medicine. Like occupational hygiene. Like data and statistics. All of these different subjects that push into, that create safety. It steals from all these things. So it's quite proud to do it. Because I think philosophy, or the whole concept of thinking analytically, which touches on a little bit of the previous podcast that we've done, and understanding the meaning of things and the purpose of things, is something that we've really missed out on when we're talking about capturing what safety is. There's a lot of discussion around it, and you could say that's philosophizing around it. But I think some really deep philosophy around, how far do we want to take it? Is safety, in the way that we use that word, a good thing? Well, clearly stopping people from getting harmed is a good thing.
I think we would all agree on that.
But how we do that, and all of the things, the paraphernalia that's associated with safety currently in workplaces, is that actually directly linked to preventing harm?
Or is it?
Or has it become something else? Has it become a little bit self-serving?
So on the very simplest level, nobody wants to get hurt.
Absolutely.
Simplest level, employers don't want their staff to get hurt.
Absolutely.
But that's not a philosophy.
No, that's absolutely not a philosophy.
Yeah. That's a desire.
That's a desire or a given.
Yep. And then you're saying, okay, so philosophy isn't a subject that you'd normally associate with safety. Were we to associate it with safety there, and I'll just put something out, could you say that zero harm is a philosophical approach to safety? The idea being that the belief that could be achievable.
Absolutely, that would be a reasonable thing to postulate, and then you could have some really detailed discussion and analytical debate around that, which is absolutely essential. And it should be like that. There shouldn't be anyone with any angle. It shouldn't get nasty. It should be absolutely fundamental to, look, zero harm, good or bad.
Yeah.
And in my experience, people become very defensive or very aggressive about that discussion.
In what way?
Well,
and from which side?
From both sides.
Yep.
And often it's zero harm, stupid. And I get this from students when they start the diploma. And I'm like, well, is it though? And they go, well, yeah, it's stupid. It's unachievable. I said, and I thought, I'm trying to get them to think, right? So is it unachievable? And they go, yeah, absolutely, it's impossible. I said, well, have you been harmed this morning? And they look at me and they go, well, no. I said, so it is achievable then.
There you go.
There's been zero harm this morning. And then they go, but that's different. I said, well, is it? Now, if you can not harm somebody for 10 minutes, can you not harm them for 20?
Can you not harm them for a day?
Absolutely. Can you not harm them for a week?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's getting people to think deeply about that rather than just jumping on a bandwagon and saying it's bad or it's good.
Yeah. So what about the other side then? So people that say, no, having this zero harm goal is good. It's what helps us keep people safe. What would you say to that?
So if people are coming at me saying zero harm is a positive thing, I would say absolutely it is. What's the objective of the Health and Safety at Work Act? To eliminate harm so far as reasonably practicable.
Yes.
If you eliminate harm, okay, how much harm is there? And I'll give you a clue. It's a number between 1 and -1.
Okay. That would have to be 0.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that the legal obligation is really zero harm.
Yeah.
Then you can make a case that, well, actually, the reasonably practicable is your little bit get out of jail free card to say, actually, there will be some harm, just the nature of people, lives, interactions.
Yeah. And that will vary from industry to industry. That will vary from task to task.
Absolutely it will. But people they don't apply sort of the philosophical principles to safety.
Yeah.
I think it's very much, let's just jump on a bandwagon. And it's bad, this is good. This is good, this is bad. When the reality is, the objective is the same.
And that's don't get people hurt.
Don't get people hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
we can't move away from that.
Okay, so if let's say I'm starting, which I'm not, by the way, but let's say I'm starting a career in health and safety, and I do want to be thinking at a very high level, talking about the philosophy, accepting or at least postulating that safety is not really a subject. There's other things. Safety is the application of other learnings in other fields. Where can I start?
I mean, obviously enroll on some courses at the MA.
But safety, but safety is not a subject.
It's not, but there is knowledge. It's the application of it, right?
Yep.
So some of the courses, the diploma course, for example, there's a unit that you teach.
Yep.
There's a couple of units that you teach in there. One of them is about teaching and learning, for want of a better to capture it.
Yep.
So I guess that's what it is that it's the application of it. And one of the terms when we met early on, I'd never heard before, was that the term Pracademic.
Yep.
And I think that's sort of what we're really talking about here, is that the knowledge is the academic stuff.
Yep.
The application of the knowledge, which is what safety really is the practical application of that knowledge.
You can't keep people safe if you're a safety manager and you're sitting in a classroom all year.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
So the other module that you teach on the diploma is the management and leadership module.
Yeah.
Now that, like, if you've got somebody with the title safety manager, like really half the course should be management, if you're going by that, right? And the other half should be safety.
I think so. Yep.
But it's not, is it?
Yeah.
Or it's not explicitly, but implicitly in the course it is.
One would need it to be. So,
and that's why we structure. I don't really want to talk too much about the course.
No,
but it's quite a good conversation.
Yeah.
The way that the course is structured isn't random. It's very deliberate.
Yes, it is.
We were very deliberate.
And we keep working
on absolutely.
Yes,
but the first block is very much an introduction to the whole concept of safety, a little bit of philosophy, reflective thinking, all that reflective practice, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then boom, it's straight into leadership.
Yeah.
And then once you've got those two anchor points, then we build on it, but it's constantly referred back to.
Yes.
So we give them that real good grounding, the students, so then they can move forward. And we've got some really spectacular facilitators. But what we're really encouraging them to do is not take what they're being told at face value. That's what we really want them to do, is to actually critically analyse what you're being told.
Yeah.
And some of it you'll agree with, some of it you won't. And if you don't, challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely challenge. That's okay.
And that's what I've always wanted this qualification to be, from my perspective, is that at the end of it, we get people that are capable of challenging, not just accepting.
And what they're challenging is other people's thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But they're doing it in a way that aligns with, I don't know, the Socratic method. It's give me some evidence and we'll judge it on that.
Yeah. Which then begs another question, given that you've mentioned the Socratic method. So leadership is important. If you're going to be a health and safety manager, the title implies that you're going to be looking after people. The leadership skills that someone who isn't a health and safety manager has can still be applied, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you almost say that at safety manager level, management is more important than the safety knowledge.
They're performing good leadership, being a good manager with a safety lens on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, if depending on the size of the organization, there's some very specialist areas of safety. Yeah. The hazardous substances is chemistry.
Yep.
So if in a big organization, you're the safety manager and that's not an area of your expertise, then you would recruit somebody that's got that expertise and then you manage them.
Yes.
So within your team, you should have and if you're not big enough to do that, then you would find somebody that you can bring in to give you that knowledge, because that would also provide assurance at a governance level.
Yeah.
If somebody there that's done the diploma, and they come out and they've got a really good, really solid qualification, but chemicals are a tiny part of that qualification.
They are.
You come out of that, there is no way that you would be able to prove that you're competent in HAZNO, and there's people that have been through the diploma that are, but that's because their background is in chemistry or they've gone on and specialised in that field.
Yep.
So, it's almost a little bit dangerous at times to say that safety is a subject, because you've got a safety qualification, therefore you can do all of safety. Ooh.
Safety's bigger.
It is.
It's all encompassing.
It is. And there's very, very, very specialist areas in there. Very specialist areas.
What areas would you then, let's say I'm working for a company, doesn't really matter the industry, we're medium to large, we're 100, 150 employees, and actually we probably should stipulate an industry, otherwise it would be hard to nail down what I'm getting at. So let's say that we work in manufacturing.
Yep.
What would some competencies be that maybe you would expect a health and safety manager? Actually, they probably won't have this, and they would need to bring in specialist assistance.
Machine guarding, without doubt.
Okay. Yep.
They may have that, but machine guarding is the standards and regulations around that are thousands of pages.
Yep.
It is a real specialist area. It's one that I've got very little. I understand the basic principles of it.
Yep.
But I've got people that I just bring in for that.
Yep.
And they're good, they're certified, they're qualified.
Yep.
I know EMA have done historically run a really good introductory machine guarding course.
We do. Yep.
But once you've done that, that doesn't ensure that you're competent.
It's still at an introductory level.
It's an introductory level.
Yeah.
And there are organisations that do offer more detailed qualifications.
Yeah.
But that would be primarily in manufacturing. That's what you would expect. There's lots of machinery, lots of guarding.
Safety's no longer a subject.
Yeah. So what you're doing there, you're studying physics and engineering.
And leadership. And hygiene.
Yeah.
And chemistry.
Yeah, it's just the application of all of this. And that's why the whole concept of a safety generalist, which is possibly another podcast in itself, it doesn't really make a whole heap of sense.
In the sense that no one can know all this about all those subjects?
Yeah. So, if you know a little bit about enough, does that make you a generalist? Or is the generalist the concept of you know enough about what you don't know, which goes back to philosophy as well, right? So when you get to a point as a safety professional and someone's asking you a question that you don't know about, you should, if you're a professional, you will say, stop, I don't know this.
Yeah, and then you'd bring an outside help.
And I think that whole idea, I would pull that back even to a deeper level and say that's what competency is. Is competency is having the sort of skills, knowledge, and experience to do the job, but it's also the ability to step back and know your limitations.
Like, I'll take you back 10 years. You remember when we were contributing to the writing of the qualifications? So not the course, ladies and gentlemen, but the qual that NZQA were putting on the framework. That was one of the things we put on the qual. One of the things we suggested is that a good health and safety professional will know when they don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And bring someone else in.
Yeah, so and it's just analysing and thinking through all of these things is what I really encourage all safety people, safety professionals, safety practitioners to do. And it's very much what I hope the students get out of the diploma, is that they don't come out with necessarily a bank of knowledge. They've got, the knowledge is increased, absolutely. But we want them to be able to critically think about that knowledge, the application of it, and also why it is as it is.
Yeah. that will help them improve their ability to do investigations, for example.
Absolutely.
Getting to the bottom, why did this happen? Yeah, we can see how it happened, but what is the reason in there behind it?
Absolutely. And I think that's...
What are the holes in the Swiss cheese model?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would encourage anyone that's listening to this to listen to some podcasts. There's a really good one called Philosophize This.
Okay.
It's an American guy. He's done 386 episodes
on philosophizing stuff.
Yeah, the first 10 are absolute gold.
Okay,
about half an hour each, very easy to listen to, but just take it right back to basics, the origins of when humans started to think.
Yep,
and how we've sort of lost our way a little bit in recent times.
Okay.
So bring back philosophy.
Well, hopefully that's what we're doing here with our listeners, getting them putting their thinking hat on and really digging a little bit deeper into stuff. So you've suggested a podcast series, Philosophize This. That could be a good place for them to start. What other things could you encourage our fellow health and safety professionals to do?
Just show an interest in it.
Yep.
And just get to know and familiarize yourself with the concept of thinking.
Yep.
And
find out what other people are thinking. Yeah.
But don't just do it through a safety lens.
Okay.
Just take a step back and look at philosophy, what it is.
Yep.
And there's some key points that, or there's possibly there's lots of different approaches, of course. So there's different approaches that will strike a chord with you. So, follow them, think about that, but then ask yourself, well, why does that strike a chord with me? Why do I like that one and that not that approach?
Yeah.
So sort of philosophize about philosophy. I think just calming down, not racing around, not being focused on audits and doing, but actually questioning why.
Get your doing.
What the outcome is.
Get your doing done, but have some space there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I've been a great believer in professionals should have about 10% spare time, 10% free time. Free's not perhaps the right word to put in there, but and for the exact
thinking
reason,
time. Reflective time.
Yeah,
and which is, I've been doing a bit of marking over the holidays, as you'll have seen with the diploma students, and quite a few of them have handed in their reflective logs.
Yes,
and it's the most rewarding assignment.
It's a joy to read them, isn't it?
Not always, but sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And some of them, just seeing how over the months the depth of their reflection has changed and developed.
Yeah.
From, it didn't work, therefore I'll try this next time, to actually, it didn't work because of this. And I think if I try this, it probably still won't work because I'm not addressing this.
Yeah.
But if I address that, then I think the whole thing will work. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And just seeing that develop in the students over that time is hugely rewarding.
It is. No, I agree. And that really is the purpose of today's episode, which is be thinking more about what's going on. You need to know what the what was, you need to know what the how was, but get stuck into the why. Get your higher level thinking going on. And don't always have just a safety lens.
No, it's what other skills do you need to bring to this role or this decision making or to gather this information?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us today. I appreciate you being in here.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, for me also. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this podcast with myself and Andy Evans. Really appreciate your company. We hope you enjoyed it. I'll sign off now. My name's Kevin Chambers, and you've been watching an EMA Health and Safety podcast. Stay safe out there, and goodbye.